Hello, I'm Beth Britton. I support Dementia Community with their communications work. Welcome and thank you for joining us for our first webinar of 2025. Before we get into the topic for today, I wanted to briefly explain a bit more about Dementia Community. Dementia Community is a charitable community benefit society, a membership cooperative that provides learning and networking opportunities for the dementia care community. We are an independent voice and inclusive organisation aiming to help all of our members to feel connected, informed, inspired, empowered, purposeful and engaged in co-produced changes that improve everyone's experiences of dementia, both in care and in wider society. This webinar is just one example of the many ways in which we do this. Community members own a £1 share in Dementia Community and membership is open to everyone. So if you aren't already a member, please do join us. There are both benefits and opportunities for all of our members. My colleague David will pop a link into the chat that will take you to our membership page. If you're having any difficulties in joining Dementia Community, do please message David or myself and we will aim to help. So on to our topic for today's webinar. Our topic for today is holidaying with dementia. I will introduce you to our speaker shortly, but just some brief housekeeping first. We are recording this webinar, so if you don't want your face on the recording, please turn your camera off. Please use the chat for your questions. We will have a Q&A and discussion after the presentation and we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. I think our speaker is also going to ask for a bit of involvement during the presentation as well, so do also look out for that. We hope to have some live participation towards the end, so if you would like to ask your question yourself, please do raise your hand when we get to the Q&A. Afterwards, David will email you with the slides and the recording will also go onto our YouTube channel, Journal of Dementia Care, so do look out for that. We will also send you a feedback form afterwards and we would be very grateful if you would complete that for us. So let's get started then. Our speaker for today is Carol Sargent. Carol, welcome. It's wonderful to have you with us and over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I will share the slide presentation and get started. Let me just put slideshow on to move it about so I can see it, and then I'll put it back in the right place. Play from the start. There we are, the title. I love this quote. We travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us. And for me, that's what travel is all about. In preparing for today's talk, I used ChatGPT, AI. I know everyone has different views about it, but I asked it to create a word cloud about holidays. And this is what came up. And for me, this is what makes holidays such an important thing for everybody, no matter what diagnosis or what life may throw at them. A holiday is a key thing to help you relax, rejuvenate, and enjoy life without the day-to-day pressures that we all have and the things that life can throw at us. So a little bit about me first. I'm a scientist by profession, top left. I did a PhD on omega-3 fatty acids and heart disease. I worked for drug companies developing new drugs in respiratory and cardiovascular for, over 20 years. The latter stage of my scientific career, dementia came into my life. My mum in the middle, and then my mother-in-law in the bottom. And like many people, it turned my personal life and my professional life on its head. And I ended up leaving the scientific profession and setting up a specialist dementia holiday company. And top right is a picture in Llandudno, with Mo and Ronnie. Ronnie had promised his family he would have a handkerchief on his head when he went paddling, and the handkerchief was too small and we had to get a tea towel, but that's a picture that captures what happened on our holidays for people with dementia and their families. And I left that organisation at the end of 2022 because I wanted people in the dementia community to have more choice for holidays. And that's me, bottom right. And I'm all about enabling and empowering people to enjoy holidays with a diagnosis of dementia, just like everybody else. Let's get the next slide. Okay. The other thing that's really important to me, and I'm involved in a lot of local groups. I'm based in Leicestershire and I facilitate a number of deep groups. And that's about changing the perceptions that society has about people living with dementia, so that the dementia community have the knowledge, opportunity, and choice to live their best lives. And that to me is a real passion. And to me, it's exemplified when I put into ChatGPT text from a charity about the dementia community going on holiday. This is the word cloud that I got, which was very, very different from just asking about what a holiday is for other people. And I think this is what the dementia community are provided with: concerns that they can't go on holiday. And this is what I want to really raise in today's presentation. First of all, what I've learned personally in supporting my family, what I learned in founding a specialist dementia holiday organisation, and what I've learned in enabling people to have the choice to go on any holiday they want to. So the next slide really is my personal perspective. From the accent, I'm Scottish. I moved away from my hometown of Aberdeen very early on, and holidays were really the essential way that I was able to maintain and grow family relationships when we lived in the US or south of England. It's key to spend time with one another and really understand what's going on in life. And what we learnt when Mum was diagnosed with dementia was we had to adapt our holidays, and we had to be flexible. And those holidays gave us a lot of learning about dementia and how we supported my mum, but also my dad as her full-time carer, not just on holiday, but when they were in their own homes. So that was one of the key triggers that led me to founding Mind for You, a specialist dementia holiday organisation. And before I show the data that we collected on these holidays that shows the benefits, if you take the risk and go on that holiday, even with all the sort of warnings and concerns that people may be encountering when they're considering going on a holiday, it's important to know that any risk you may be taking in going outside your normal environment or your normal day-to-day activities, that's a risk worth taking. So I want to share the benefits that were found in analysing data that was collected and done independently by researchers at Bangor University. And before I show that, I just want to show a quick video so people have some idea of what a Mind for You holiday was like, so you can put into context the benefits that were found in these holidays. This video was actually created by the Police Mutual Fund, who offered retired police officers living with dementia the opportunity to go on holiday.
Been married 57 years. We lived in the same street. We've been together since she was 16. She was getting forgetful with words. Couldn't remember words, and that's the problem she has. Front lobal something or other. It affects the memory part of the brain. And of course she was a district nurse, so for many years. So she was quite intelligent, far more intelligent than I. And started to lose that and lose her handwriting. And that was about 18 months ago, I suppose, maybe a bit longer. Can't read her writing now. And she forgets how to do the stove and the oven. Can't remember how. And the phone is a waste of time having a phone. Can't use a phone. You can't use a house phone. So there's all these little things, but other things, her memory for other things is fine.
What we do is an alternative respite. It's supported holidays. It's kind of in between health and tourism. It's not about lots and lots of people. It's about something that's very personalised. And for people living with dementia, it's an extended family holiday.
If we went to a hotel and my wife sort of did or didn't do something, they'd be, what's wrong? But they understand here exactly what the problem is, and they adapt to it.
Every member of staff, and myself included, what you see is people who arrive who are somewhat anxious, are very much the cared and the cared for, and you see them gain self-confidence, laughing, enjoying one another's company, other people's company, and at the end of the holiday you see the couple again, and you can see that the carer realizing, oh my gosh, there's still bits in there that I hadn't realized, and you also see the person living with dementia going away more confident that they can do things when they get home, and it's great. And we take lots of photos, and some people you can see physically what they look like at the start and then at the end of the holiday.
So far it's been perfect. They seem caring people. I mean, one was a nurse, the other was a social worker, so they've got a caring nature anyway, haven't they, really? Yeah, it's good. I'm looking forward to 2 more days. Looking forward to it.
It's very much about the social interactions on the holidays, so we never meet at the property. We always meet somewhere for lunch and do something in the afternoon. Then we'd come back to the property about 4 o'clock. We'd all sit and have a cup of tea, and we'll all sit down, big family meal, and the table behind us, and lots of discussions after dinner, just like you'd do on your own family holiday. It's structured, but not to an extent that people feel they're on ceremony.
She's cared for me. I was injured in a motorcycle accident, and she cared for me in 5 months when I was laid up in that one, and I had 2 hips replaced because of the accident. So I had knee problems with the accident and hip problems. She looked after me. So it's my turn.
So that hopefully gives you some idea of what a Mind for You holiday was like in Dorset. Sadly, the pandemic and the economic crisis meant that Mind for You holidays, like revitalised dementia holidays, are no longer available. But what we want to do is share the real benefits that we're seeing with these holidays. As a scientist, I worked with different people to collect lots of information to really see if what I was describing in that video was really what the guests found on a holiday. And a great collaboration with Diane Snedden at Bangor University meant that they took all the data and analysed it to see what were the feedback and the findings from the guests on the holidays. And this is where I'm looking for a little bit of audience participation. So I'm just getting you set up. This first slide really just shows the guest satisfaction, which was incredible, out of a maximum of 5 as to how they found the whole holiday experience. You can see, I could say it was 5, if I rounded it up, but really, really great feedback from the people who came on the holidays. And, over 50% of people came on more than one holiday, if health and finances allowed. And with lots of people who came on 6, 7, 8 holidays with us. This is where I'm looking for, some thoughts as I share the particular themes that the researchers at Bangor University highlighted when they looked at the feedback from the guests. So the first one, creating new and happy thoughts, were a common theme that the researchers identified. If people are able to type or shout out, I don't know if this will work, but I'll give it a try.
Memories.
Thank you. So, this is really great picture of Ron and Jean, who came on lots of holidays, and she absolutely loved dancing. And it was something they hadn't had the opportunity to do much of. So, next one. So here's a picture of Jim and Sylvia. I think that's up in Scotland. Any ideas what the theme for this particular feedback might be?
Relaxing.
Absolutely. Next one. Yeah.
Time. Quality time.
Quality time, absolutely right. And that's something that can be so difficult when you're living with dementia and juggling all the things that life has to throw at you. And the other thing on this slide was one of the quotes that I think was the one that I'm kind of most proud of, but also exemplified. This lady had been given feedback that by a healthcare professional, you shouldn't go on holiday. Her husband had Parkinson's plus dementia. And any ideas what the quote she might have given are too good to be? What was that?
Rude.
True, yeah. Our too good to be true holiday came true. And that for me was absolutely fantastic and really goes to challenging some of the perceptions people have who haven't taken people with dementia on holiday or haven't really understood what their needs are. Next theme, renewed what for life? Any ideas on this one?
Zest.
Yep, spot on. So, yeah, another great theme to have been highlighted, because that's exactly what we saw. Started with people who weren't necessarily engaging, but, I just love this picture. Who knows what the joke was and what they were going to do, but that's the change that we saw in people when they were on holiday. Next one, see my technical abilities are, there we go. You're off the hook now. You don't have to shout out. There's a few more themes that I want to share. Love this picture, mum and daughter down in Devon, stress-free. When you remove the day-to-day routine, this is the sort of fun that people can have when they've got quality time, and you don't have all those pressures. The other thing that we saw all the time, and it was great that the research picked this up, was peer support. And that wasn't just peer support from carers to other family carers, it was peer support for people living with dementia. Lots of lovely memories I have of the peer support that I would never in my wildest dream have imagined when I looked at the interests different people had before they came on holiday. And, sitting there having a meal was such an important thing for the guests, just to be able to chat and enjoy life just like everybody else does. And this was one that I hadn't really picked up, from being on lots of holidays, but the research has picked up, and freedom from guilt. Lots of the carers felt they didn't do a very good job, felt, they shouldn't necessarily get frustrated and irritated with their loved ones. But by meeting other people and in being in an environment where everybody understood, they recognised they were doing a really good job, and it was okay to feel guilty. And the last one was one that to me was the most powerful. The theme that came out was more positive about the future. And, we all know, everybody listening to this presentation, dementia is a chronic neurodegenerative disease. So the future is daunting. So things and interventions that can make people feel more positive, to me, are what we should have more of. And here's Carol with her scientific geeky hat, because once a scientist, always a scientist. One of the clinical measurements that we incorporated, having spoken to experts in the field, was geriatric depression scale, which is a community assessment that's used to triage people who should go and see their GP about depression. And this is from the carers who went on the holiday, and you can see a statistically significant reduction in geriatric depression scale. And what to me was startling, first and foremost, that if we broke that data down into carers who would be considered clinically depressed, 56% of them reached that characterization before they went on holiday, but that was reduced to 35% after they got home on holiday. This wasn't at the end of their holiday, so that's when they were at home. So hopefully this gives you an idea of the sorts of benefits and the range of health and well-being improvements people can see when they go on a holiday with a diagnosis with dementia. The next bit I wanted to move on to was giving people an approach on how you can select the right holiday. And I put together this free ebook. The link is there, as a 10-step approach. And that was really using all my learning I had with family and on taking, I think it was just under 2,000 people on holidays throughout, I think it was 13 different destinations in the UK. And just to give you an idea of, are people really interested? Within the first 6 months it's only been just over 6 months I've done it, 6,000 views of this booklet, and all I have it on is Facebook. So the dementia community are really interested about how they can go on a holiday. So I'm going to take you through the 10 steps very briefly. There's more detail in the booklet, and for each one, a tip that I think might be useful to consider. And I'm sure there are people in the audience who will have additional tips and thoughts around enabling people to go on holiday. So the first thing is really having a discussion together, be it daughter and mom, husband and wife. why is it you want to go on a holiday? And one of the things, I facilitate a group of people living with dementia on dementia tourism. And one of the things they're always quite open about, that they're generally more gung-ho on going away and doing things than their families are. So it's about making a list together about what you want to do and don't do. And I think it's having that understanding of what one another is not comfortable in doing is really important, and agreeing what are the things you really want to do and what do you want to avoid. And one wonderful tip that a lovely couple gave me, who were navigating their world with dementia, was whenever they had a discussion along this line, they'd put it in a little notebook. They'd both write, what they had agreed and sign and date it, yeah? So that it gave them the opportunity to go back if there was ever any confusion about, did we really agree to that and why did we agree? So, the first thing is making sure you're both planning for the same thing and have similar expectations. And the next one, and to me, this is the most important thing, and actually the hardest thing to do, is identify what worries you about going on holiday. And this isn't always easy, and it can be conversations that you've not necessarily had with one another. But having that discussion makes it possible to be able to be less anxious, to be more prepared, and to think about, okay, are we both willing to take this risk? And if we are, what are the solutions? What's the support that we'd need to have in place? And, to me, this is important. And it's, if you're comfortable speaking to others, asking their advice if they've been on holidays, or this is your worry, what solutions have you had? And, my tip would be asking for solutions on online forums. There's lots of different forums, and find out, if other people have had this problem on holiday or at home, what sort of solutions have they taken that have improved things? The most strange one I had was a lady kept falling out of bed and standard bed rails didn't work. So the foam spaghetti tube that you use for learning to swim, her son-in-law had found that putting that under the sheet was enough of an edge that made Marjorie just turn around and go back to sleep. So there's all sorts of support you can get from your peers and other professionals. The next important one is consider the transport you need to take. For me, that makes and breaks any holiday I go on. And what I found with my mum and dad and with lots of our guests, it's about making travel part of your holiday, not the thing you just have to get done as quickly as possible. Take as much thought about how you travel as how you pick which accommodation or which destination. And, we all love the independence of having our own car to get about. But, if you are spending a lot of time supporting a loved one, or you have a very, very busy life, consider asking others to provide the transport. Maybe ask, a friend to drive you to your holiday destination. We had that with a lot of the retired police officers. Their friends would offer to drive them to the holiday and pick them up. And the other thing, is you don't have to travel too far to have a holiday because it's we have this image that we have to go, I don't know, jump on an aeroplane and go to a holiday, but you can get all the benefits without necessarily go too far away. And the tip is keep a lookout early this year. The Deep Discoveries group that I facilitate, they've created a dementia-inclusive transport itinerary that gives all the advice for assistance, the approaches that allow them to travel in a way that's comfortable and relaxing. And the other big shout out is look at the Sunflower Lanyard website. It's not just a lanyard that tells people you've got a hidden disability. It's international. There's information about which airports in different countries are dementia inclusive, and look out. You can get through security quickly with a sunflower lanyard. There are all these options. So there's lots out there that can make transport much easier. Next one is length of holiday. What I'm saying might be quite controversial, but from my experience, I would say it's a minimum of 4 nights that you should be considering going away. And that's because it takes time to settle into a new environment, whether you've got dementia or not. But with dementia, it can take longer to get used to that new environment. And also, it can be tiring traveling. So, that would be my strong piece of advice. A weekend probably isn't long enough for somebody with dementia to get the maximum out of a holiday, and may end up more stressful than just taking that little bit longer. And the other bit is really a build on the previous one, but it's taking more time to travel. If you are going to fly, consider staying overnight at an airport hotel, so it makes it a more relaxing holiday. Number 5 on the 10-step approach is pick your activities. And what I'd say here is create a balance of new things. Holidays are an opportunity for new experiences, but also, you don't necessarily know if you will or will not enjoy it. So build in some things that are familiar that you'll both enjoy. And certainly in asking feedback, we did a number of surveys within Mind for You about what was important and going on holiday, particularly asking carers. And the thing for them that was most important was that they saw their loved one with dementia enjoying themselves. That was the key thing. So getting that balance is worthwhile taking some time. And the other thing I learned at personal and with Mind for You is don't plan too many things. Give some space and time to relax. It's easy to think I'm on holiday, I'm in a new place, I've got to do lots of things, but just give space just to enjoy whatever may come. You don't have to have every minute of the day planned. And when you're thinking about going to a new place, I would encourage people to look in Ewan's Guide. That is an organisation where people can submit reviews, people who have all sorts of disabilities. And in working with ourselves, they included a dementia assessment for different days out in accommodation. And there's also an app called Snowball that highlights different venues that are inclusive. So that's a tip to have a look and see. And if there's somewhere you take people and it's really great for the dementia community, then put it on these apps and websites so other people can benefit from your knowledge of what works. The next step 6, what support do you need? And this is really important to think about. But also, support isn't just, as shown in this picture, people. Support can be equipment. It can be technology. It can be information, as well as professionals in the tourism industry, professionals in the care industry. And I think the other thing is it's about asking for help, asking for information, because the tourism industry is all about hospitality and is all about looking to give the individual the personal support for them to enjoy themselves at that new destination. And, one thing that, I've highlighted as a tip here, there's many, many around support, but it's thinking about speak to your accommodation provider for solutions that you're apprehensive. I don't know how many times guests came on our holidays, and incontinence is an issue for many people with dementia. And we'd find that 2/3 of the suitcase was full of incontinence pads with barely no room, certainly for the carers' clothes. These are things that can get delivered to a holiday property, to a hotel. And that's one of the things we started doing. We visited people before they came on holiday and made sure, is there anything that you need regularly that we could order it, or it could get delivered directly to where you're staying. So, it's thinking about support and other people are there to help. Then you're choosing your accommodation. We would all pick very different places, I have no doubt. One of the things, if you want a relaxing holiday and you don't want to bring your own car, which can be a choice that many people make, then you really need to think about what are the public transport links from the accommodation you're staying. Can you get to those holiday activities easily in the way you want? And the other big thing, I would say, is have a discussion with that accommodation provider. Introduce that you're coming, you have a diagnosis of dementia, and these are the things that are important for you in an accommodation. The group I facilitate, one of the big beefs is, why can't people just show you how to use the TV in a hotel room? Where are the instructions? How to put the shower on? All of these sorts of things. So ask before you go away. And, consider a homely environment, what is familiar for somebody. And, hotels are what we all automatically associate with a holiday, but actually a more familiar environment, like in this picture, a rented property in the Peak District. This is Hogrange Farms, who got the award from Visit England for the most inclusive holiday accommodation last year. And they have specific adaptations for the dementia community, as well as other people with different disabilities. And my tip is thinking about accommodation, that it's not just bricks and mortar, it's something that you can make feel more like home by bringing familiar items. Our oldest man that we ever took on a holiday, what made a home from home was a packet of fudge by his side when he was watching the TV. So it's thinking about things beyond just bricks and mortar and physical things that can help people settle in. Selecting your destination. Well, in many ways, that's taking into consideration the different steps in 1 through 7. But, again, I'm highlighting the importance about thinking about how you're going to get there. And also about, your goal may be to go on a cruise holiday, but maybe it's about taking small steps in doing holidays that are shorter distances or simpler to gain confidence and understanding of what you do both need to go on a holiday. And it's about asking for recommendations from peers and travel experts. What I've learned in setting up Sargent Group Consulting is there's so much knowledge in the broader disabled community. And if you look at many of the challenges people with dementia have to overcome, other disabled groups have to overcome similar things. So we can learn a lot from them about what works and what doesn't work. So that's my tip around selecting a destination. Step 9 is create your own itinerary. What I'd say is, vary it. So you have some quiet days, so you have some busier days. I'd certainly always, when I was away on holiday, and, I do this myself, is build in extra time for comfort breaks, finding that toilet, a nice place to get drinks takes you longer when you're in a new environment. And one of the great things about the Snowball app is that is linked to Google Maps for people who are familiar with using Google Maps. And they have every single disabled toilet in the UK is there and visible, and you can use it like Google's Maps if you're out and about in a strange place to find the nearest disabled toilet, and that can be a huge weight off your mind. And the other bit is always build in a plan B in case of bad weather, or that you've just done too much and you want a rest. What's that plan B if you're in that self-catering accommodation and you don't have the energy to go out and get dinner? You know, how do you approach those things? And my tip around creating your itinerary and thinking about times is if you're worried about a place being too busy, because that's something that can be very stressful for both of you, then when you look for that particular, be it a gardens to visit, Chatsworth as an example, what Google has on the right-hand side, it's got a little graph that shows you days of the week when it's most busy, times of the day when it's most busy. So there's information you can use to try and avoid the really busy times, and that can help in just making it more enjoyable and relaxing. And the last one, that's the one that probably took me the longest to work out, was critical, but is really obvious because I was thinking about it all the time, because I'm a person who automatically thinks if there's a risk, what's the solution? But I realise not everybody thinks about those worst case situations. And that's about creating your emergency plan. And I was facilitating a group yesterday where a lady was saying, oh, she hurt her foot over the weekend, and she suddenly realised she needed to have something in place because her husband wasn't able to support her in the way she needed, and she hadn't arranged for somebody that she felt she could just pick up the phone and ask for some help. So what I'd say around your emergency thing is make an appointment with your GP, make sure you've got sufficient medical, supplies for going away on holiday. Have a discussion. If there is a health emergency when you're away, what should you do? One of the great things from the pandemic and what we've been able to support people with is you can have a telephone consultation when you're in a different part of the country with your own GP. So it's easier now to deal with those situations and speak to people who understand what's required. And, as I said, the lady you spoke to yesterday, think who is that person you could just bother if something goes wrong. And, you don't have the ability to go and look up the information of when that next train is because it's been cancelled. Think who that person is and tee them up. Because generally people are willing to help more than we recognise. And, the tip around step 10 is ask the place you're planning to stay to provide you with emergency contact details. If there's a chemist, where there might be a late night shop opening because there's a particular, I don't know, type of tea that's run out and somebody likes, where those GP surgeries are if you have to physically go and see somebody. So hopefully this just gives you a brief idea of how you can approach holidaying with dementia and how it can be possible. You just have to take more thought and consideration. And I'd say most of these tips are equally applicable for everybody on the call to have the best possible holiday. So last few slides really before questions. I've added this in for useful information because on my website, there's a page dedicated to specialist organisations like Dementia Adventure, who do specialist dementia holidays, self-catering properties that specifically recognise the dementia community. There are some hotels that I'm finding that have staff that are trained and are modifying things to welcome the dementia community. And I'd love to hear from you if you're aware of particular destinations, accommodations, places that people in the dementia community are welcomed with open arms, because that welcome makes a huge difference to everybody. I've also put a link to some dementia traveller blogs. The late Wendy Mitchell gave us a great blog, and I'm sure anybody that read Wendy's blog knows about her paradise in Keswick, where she visited regularly. And there are many others who've highlighted the importance of travel. The last one is a dementia travel and tourism Facebook group that I've set up for people to give peer support to ask the questions that I've highlighted. And really, my last two slides, I'd say we all know the benefits of a good holiday. Employers have a legal responsibility to provide holidays for their employees. We know 50% of dementia carers can spend over 100 hours a week supporting loved ones with dementia. And I know from the response I'm getting from the very minimal social media I'm doing, the dementia community really want to have a holiday. And, let's change the negative narrative around holidaying with dementia. That word cloud that was generated by AI, none of Carol's biases. I'm passionate about this. I've seen the difference. But I think that's what we can collectively start to highlight. It's okay to go outside your normal environment, and it's okay to do new things, and it's okay that some of those new things people may not like. That's part of life, and we shouldn't stop people being able to do those things when they've got dementia. And this is my last slide. Live, love, and laugh. That's been my approach to dementia, and having a sense of humour when situations can be difficult. And some of my best memories on my own personal holidays and holidays taking people with dementia are when things go wrong and how we've managed to come out of it learning more about one another. So my message is, let's encourage holidaying with dementia, and happy to take any questions.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Carol. I really enjoyed that. A brilliant 10 tips, which, as you say, I think very much applicable to interesting. You didn't get to destination until step 8. I think a lot of people would start with, well, where are we going to go? But actually, you kind of proved that actually there's other considerations before you think, right, now what's the right destination? So that was really interesting.
Yeah, and I think, that's how I would have started doing holidays before, taking my family away. It's where we're going, not thinking about what's important. And that was my learning. And a lot of the learning was from getting it wrong, from realizing I didn't understand, not just my mum who had dementia, but my dad, who was her full-time carer, what he needed when he went away on holiday. And that's why number 2 for me is it's the hard one to do, because I know my parents were very resistant in letting me know what life was really like. And it was only when I went and stayed for longer than 24 hours that I realised the sorts of things that they were having to deal with.
Step 2 was identify the worries, wasn't it? And it's about confronting those fears that we have and kind of tackling those head on, which is difficult in so many aspects of life, isn't it? And living with dementia is really tricky. Now, I'm sure the audience may well have some questions. I have one I'm going to weigh in with while people are having a think about that. So if you would like to ask a question, do pop it in the chat or pop your hand up. Carol, if you want to stop sharing your slides as well, and then we can sort of see everyone who wants to be seen. So my question was going to be that actually, obviously you've supported and you know of a lot of people who probably still living at home with husband, wife, son, daughter, etc., going on holidays. How much holidaying goes on for people who then need social care? So partly home care, but also if you do move into a care home, because we know in the learning disability sector, people are encouraged to plan holidays and they have holidays with their support workers. But actually, do we see enough of this in dementia, and should we be seeing it more?
So I would say it isn't exclusive to people who still live at home in the community. If people have personal care packages, we took people on our holidays with that and encourage that. I would say on that front, build in more time because the individual's in a different environment, and it's a different care provider. So that's important. And we took people who were living in care homes, and it's absolutely key to maintain that relationship with the outside world. And the thing I would say in doing that, you have to really be sure it's the right thing for the individual, and speak to the family and the staff, and do it together to make sure that you're not putting undue pressure on the individual, that you have an understanding of what's important to them in their new care home environment, because that can be quite different from the learnings that the family have at home. So it does take more time, but I think it's key. In other countries have much more engagement. In August, I went to visit the first dementia-inclusive resort in Bali that's been established by Community Homes Australia. And that was set up for their residents who are in care home environments to be able to go and enjoy a holiday with their families and to experience the things that everybody else does. And, there are models where, that's in Thailand, people are moving whole stock and barrel to different parts to have a care environment in what looks like a holiday resort. So, couldn't agree with you more. And the analogies from learning difficulties to dementia and the importance of holidays should be raised, and there should be the same opportunities for the dementia community.
I love that Bali idea. Goodness me, I think I could happily do that. That sounds fantastic. Helen, you've raised your hand. Would you like to ask Carol a question?
Hi. Yeah, apologies if my video goes funny. Sometimes my signal's not very good. Really good to hear all of that, Carol. I've actually been on dementia venture holidays as well, and I work for Alzheimer's Society. So I just got a couple of, I worry about the cost of these things. As for anything, any holiday costs money, doesn't it? But I understand a tailored approach is a really good idea. And I hope people see the value in paying for that if they need to, because you're providing the service. And but I do understand a lot of people wouldn't be able to afford it. And then there's also my worry is about the different stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, whichever type, and whether the person may want to go on the holiday but may not be suitable. And that's coming down to what you've said. A lot of consideration needs to be about whether it's right for that person. So just comments really, but really interesting.
Yeah, and I think cost, that was one of my reasons to wanting to step away from Mind for You, because I was conscious to provide that level of tailored support came with a cost. And that's why a lot of my work is working with organizations and providing people with the information. So perhaps it's a family member, perhaps it's a friend who can come along. I know, I met groups, in fact, who support one another, a few couples living with dementia who go away together and go at a time, and you can get the right cost. So I think it's absolutely key that price is not a barrier. And the specialist ones are great, but because you have the ratio of staff to guess that comes at a cost. But there are absolutely ways to do it without spending lots of money.
People should know there's funding available, and they should always ask, is what I say.
Yeah, and if you're still, if you have the funds to go on holiday, a holiday with somebody with dementia shouldn't cost you any more. What it is it takes you more time to think about what that holiday is. I would argue the actual cost of the holiday shouldn't be any more. That would be my thing. Obviously, if funding is an issue, and on the links that I've provided, there are links to where you can get funding from different organisations. So, because I recognise that that is key, and some people absolutely need that level of support to do it. And as far as what limits somebody going away, I would say it's behavioural challenges, and generally people wouldn't be living at home with significant behavioural challenges. And the other thing, just in a very practical sense, I would say if people are receiving a care package more than twice a day, I'd argue, are you really going to get the benefits in being somewhere else? Yeah, and staying somewhere else.
It's not right for everybody.
Yeah, so that's, they're the things, but other aspects, I'd say no. I think there are adaptations. And if you look to the broader disabled community and how they continue to holiday, I think there's a lot of reservations that we have within the dementia community that maybe we can learn from others. But it's about having that confidence, knowing you've got the support if something goes wrong. I think that's very, very important for most people.
It's invaluable. If we could bottle it, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. And I guess perhaps there's a bit of a takeaway message there, Carol, of don't delay, really. If this is something you would like to try and achieve with a loved one, it's something to crack on and do and not put off. And as you say, there is different funding available. Now, we are running out of time, but I do want to get to Natalie's questions. So she's popped 2 in the chat, and I'm going to read them both out for you. So what's your experience of special assistance at airports? I've heard patchy reports.
So what I would say is
it's more to stay with family. It can get overwhelming sometimes, and staying in a family member's house, which is unfamiliar.
So I think they're all great questions. I would say of all the travel, I think flying is the best one. I may be a little biased. That was what my mum found more relaxing, but that's my experience in the amount of work that's been made to make airports more dementia friendly and dementia inclusive, and it's ongoing. I know I went through Birmingham Airport. They've got the sunflower lanyard and options for people with disabilities, even going through passport control now. You don't have to go through the same queues. So, and I would encourage Natalie to have a look on the sunflower lanyard scheme to know which international airports recognise and have staff trained for invisible disabilities, and look for the quiet rooms and all these things. So I think airports are your best in that sense, but thinking about quiet times, all the things I've said, if you can avoid travelling at really busy times, then that's the best thing to do. In the sense of going abroad, I think it's understanding what that emergency planning is. I'd say going with families, it's so important to recognise how you pace and how you organise, what things you all do together, what things you don't. I learned that very early on. My mum and dad used to come down every 6 weeks. But the chaos of my children going to school, me going to work, children going to activities, that was all too much to have continuously. So I think if you're wanting family holidays, there'll be times where you can all do things together, and that noise and that chaos is okay. But you have to recognise and be aware and have some agreement between one another when it gets too much, and think about, have you somewhere where there are 2 sitting rooms, so there's a quiet room. Because nobody likes going back into their bedroom. That's almost like you've done something wrong. So it's thinking about those things. But, for my relationship my children had with my parents, going away on those holidays were what created those things. And sometimes it is not overthinking and just saying it's time for, the children just to play with their grandparents, and you just leave them to it and they amuse themselves in their own ways. Sometimes in our very hectic, busy world where we've got to plan things, sometimes it's nice just to let things, take their time and just evolve. Yeah. So that would be the advice I'd give for that. But, I think we're a small country and we look at things like flying and going abroad. It's really quite daunting for the dementia community. But when I link in with people in Australia, people in America, where actually people have to travel to get the right healthcare on airplanes, people have to travel those distances to see their families in the same country. There are ways to do those. There are travel companions you can get and all sorts of things if you want to spend the money. But there's lots of learning, and Teepa Snow has a great set of videos about the best way to go through an airport, with somebody with dementia, with lots of great tips. So there's lots out there, but it's recognising you will have to adapt in some way at some point. Maybe not at the beginning. But look out for those things and be, try and encourage a relationship where everyone's comfortable about saying, I've had enough, thank you. I need some peace and quiet, please, and read my book in a corner. Yeah. And that's how you can feel like I can feel that sometimes when you're in big groups away, that actually, just some solitude for a bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. We've just got to recognize it.
Super. Thank you, Carol. We've run out of time, sadly, because I've really enjoyed everything you've talked about. Kind of inspired me to think, goodness, I probably need to start thinking about a holiday. So just thank you, Carol, for all your tips and advice. So Helen says, great presentation. Thanks, Carol. Natalie says, thanks, Carol. There are links in the chat to Carol's website. You will, of course, get the slides with the links as well that Carol has in the slides. So just before I say goodbye to you all, just to say our next webinar is Ask an Admiral Nurse on Tuesday, the 28th of January. My colleague David has put a link in the chat for you to book onto that webinar. And you can also book onto our February webinars that we now have available on our website. And again, David's put the list of our full webinar schedule on that page in the coming weeks as well. We've got a really busy program lined up for the rest of the year, but it's been wonderful to kick it off with you, Carol. So thank you so much. I hope our audience are feeling inspired to go holidaying, and just thank you all so much for coming along, and thank you, Carol.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the invite. And if anybody has any other organisations or information, please let me know. I want people to have the best choices possible here.